Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Emre Çelik. I have the pleasure of presiding over the Rumi Forum, one of today's organizers. I want to thank our hosts, the Islamic Society, as well as our partners in JIDS, and of course our lovely speakers. Yes, let's give them a round of applause. Let's not forget that it is a collective effort. I've had the pleasure of presiding over the forum for the last 10 years. The forum celebrates its 20th year this year. It was founded in 1999 by Muslim Americans to be proactive in regards to interfaith and intercultural dialogue and respect. And I particularly call your attention to the fact that 1999 is pre-9/11. So this was considered to be a very important proactive step by our founding board members and our president. And I'm very pleased to have played a part in the last decade. And we look forward to being proactive, not being complacent, and looking for opportunities to bring together people of all backgrounds, cultural, faith, or otherwise, to highlight our common and shared values, and of course to continue on the path of dialogue. Very important value for all of us, I believe. And I now call upon Dan to provide his remarks. Thank you, and have a lovely and blessed day.
Hi, I'm Dan Spiro, President of the Jewish-Islamic Dialogue Society of Washington, or JIDS. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to, first of all, before we begin the substance of this, thank these two organizations. Imam Faisal introduced himself at the very beginning of this. This masjid has been so important to JIDS over the years. There was a time when we needed to bring together some students from Palestine and Israel to give a talk, and we had 3 days. We needed to find a venue that it could give us a place to have this meeting in 3 days. Who gave us the venue in 3 days but Islam? 3 days. And we've come here over the course of time, many times, and Imam Faisal is a gift, frankly, to Washington, D.C. and interfaith. So he's definitely somebody you want to get to know, and we're all thrilled that this masjid is in our area. As far as the Rumi Forum is concerned, I guess we got together January of 2018 and put together a program on minority faiths. We had a Sikh representative as well as Muslim and Jewish. And so now this is officially a thing. So we are looking forward to January of 2020. I hope we can come up with a good topic together. So what you are going to witness and participate in today is a rather bizarre session. We are talking about mysticism originally, and then we will transition into the happy topic of
the
Holocaust and other atrocities that are happening around the world. This being International Holocaust Memorial Day. So all I can tell you about the tie-in between the two is if you are interested in spirituality and some mysticism, but you're not interested in the Holocaust, that's not mysticism, that's escapism. Okay? You gotta take in all of it. And there are a few topics, as we will discuss later, that are more fascinating and potentially enriching than that horrible episode in history known as the Holocaust. I will personally be talking about the Holocaust later, and a number of people will be talking about such atrocities. But we begin with mysticism, and with these three panelists, and we will hear from them. And then instead of going into a plenary Q&A, we will be going into small groups, and they will be circulating around the small groups, because we have so much to cover today. And we have another breakout room where we separate the small groups, and some groups will be meeting here. So let me begin with the first speaker. I assume we have no volunteers because they're all too humble, so I will just pick one. Gabriel Abbasi. was born in the Middle East in a family belonging to one of the oldest Sufi orders in Islam. As a youth, he began a lifelong journey of traveling and exploring various aspects of the Abrahamic faith, including Jewish, Christian, and Muslim mysticism, that focuses on promoting the concept that all are one, and our ultimate purpose in life is finding unity among all this multiplicity. This ongoing search for truth and mercy eventually culminated in Gabriel's participation in various Sufi gatherings that follow the teachings of Rumi and other great mystics. He has volunteered and supported many initiatives and efforts by spiritual, religious, and secular groups and organizations that promote cultural understanding and interfaith harmony in their own ways. And the beautiful concepts of selfless service that are inherent in Sufism and Islamic mysticism generally have inspired him to work on this exciting concept of the culture of compassion, which includes the creative use of blogs, social media, and other forms of technology to heal our planet. And practically from the inception of the Jewish-Islamic Dialogue Society of Washington, Gabriel has been a selfless presence, emphasizing service, patience, good humor, and love. And if you've been to a lot of our meetings, you probably see this guy missing the beginning of the meeting because he's always out there trying to figure out how to bring people in, how to help people. What can I do to serve? This man personifies service. He is truly an institution in our organization, an authentic disciple of Rumi.
Thank you so much. Shalom and salam, shalom and salam. Let's begin with a point of gratitude. Even as a child, I learned to always say Alhamdulillah for every blessing. So today, I say praise be to Allah and Adonai for this opportunity to come together. So speaking of good luck, I'll start with where I ended up living. There was a big apartment building on Massachusetts Avenue many years ago, and I happened to have a little room in a big apartment building that happened to be behind Washington Hebrew congregation, of all places. I said, that's interesting, you know. I guess there's something there for me, because I was always trying to find out what's going on with humanity. So I used to go and listen to talks at Washington Hebrew, because in Islam it said, seek knowledge from cradle to grave. And that came from Judaism, that pursuit of knowledge. So I used to go listen, and every speaker that came there, they spoke of compassion and mercy. And at the time, I was in a mini retirement from all my years of hard work. So I used to stay, I was very interested in awakening. So I had borrowed all these books on awakening. I used to read them all night. And by dawn, I would fall asleep and use them as a pillow. I had the books right under my head, sleeping all day, concerned about awakening. So I'm just going to touch on some parts of the journey, how lucky I was, because at the time, we didn't have all these beautiful mosques and synagogues that we have today, who have welcomed all of us. So we are very lucky in this area. So many beautiful synagogues and mosques. At the time, it was Washington Hebrew, so I took advantage and I learned, and I was still sleeping all day, seeking awakening at night. So one day, as luck would have it, and this street right here has something to do with my awakening. A friend of mine told me there's going to be a gathering about Rumi and spirituality at a dear friend's house who happens to be here, Fakhri, sitting right among us, this young lady sitting here. And I said, where is it? They gave me an address right here up the street. Happens to be her house. So we all gathered there, and everything I heard matched everything I had heard at Washington Hebrew. that compassion and religion and everything comes down to loving kindness and lifting a broken spirit and mending a broken heart. So that was good news. And at the same time, I was getting very interested in comedy, spiritual comedy. And I had to come up with a motto, like a slogan. Finally, the slogan I had, because I was doing some stand-up comedy in DC, my slogan was, my name is Gabriel, and I used to be sane. That was a big sign I always carried with me until, they took it. I don't know what happened. But I think one of the drunks, they took the sign. They used to say, I used to be sane. Because at the time, I had resigned from sanity and logic and everything. And that's the history of mysticism. The way Sufism and Islamic spirituality began was that about 800-900 years ago, some Muslims realized that Christian spirituality and Jewish spirituality was already there. And it was time to inherit the beauty. Because everything else had failed them. Government, politics, money, bazaar, daily life, everything had failed them. So they were seeking a refuge. And the refuge came in the form of mysticism. They took refuge in the sanctity of the heart. Because they realized that the one place they are completely safe with the beloved is the sanctity of the human heart, especially broken hearts. So thus began a pursuit for union with their best friend, that was God, Elohim, Allah. And that gave impetus to everything we know. That escape into the sanctuary of the heart gave rise. In Judaism, there were great masters at the time, like Maimonides and others. And there was some stories in Cordoba, and in Konya, of course, it began with Rumi and Shams. And as I studied them, I noticed that they all come down to the tree of compassion and the fruit of that tree. So what is the fruit? If compassion and mercy, because every prayer we do in Islam is, in the name of Allah, most compassionate, most merciful, Adonai is compassionate. So if that's the tree, what is the fruit? They said the fruit is selfless service to the saints and the sinners. That's why even in my prayers, I include everybody. I say, Almighty Allah, bless all the saints and all the sinners, even those who cut in front of me in traffic. Whatever driver they are, bless them all, one and all, every religion, everyone, no exception. Because ultimately, in Arabic, it said, nafs wahida. There's only one being. Just as there's one God, there's one creation and one human being. That's why they said when we save one life, it's as if we have saved the entire humanity. So I had written some notes to add that this sharing today is completely non-scientific because I have nothing to do with science or academia. I resigned from them a long time ago. When I got into comedy, I swore not to get involved in science, academics, or anything, because they had all failed me. All the degrees that I had bought online and offline, they had failed me because they didn't amount to anything. I had even studied some, but didn't work. Nothing had worked except when we gathered at Fakhri's home up the street. And then as we were learning about awakening, the house caught fire. But then, by then, our hearts had already begun to awaken, and all that I had learned at Washington Hebrew and all that I was learning about Rumi's teachings, they all came together, and we began a journey of interfaith. When I learned about JIDS, I thought that's a great idea, and other activities, and social justice, homelessness, everything you can imagine, we got involved. But the good thing was, the more I served, the more I realized that I'm standing on tall shoulders. There are those who have gone before us. As we look back in history, going back to, in fact, Konya, where Rumi was, itself was an interfaith town. They say when Rumi passed away, there was a large contingent of Christians and Jews who came to pay respect, because they knew that this is a brother of their own, standing in oneness before God and in compassion for all sentient beings. So today, I promise to make it short and sweet. And I'm hoping that someday we can have a talk sharing on Sufi and mystical humor, because there is a gentle sense of humor. They say God is beautiful and loves beauty in speech and in manners and in everything. Part of it is to look at the universe while we are bewildered, because we cannot fathom the beauty of God and the beauty of universe and the unity of all beings. And when everything fails, we turn to mysticism and some laughter. There's a joyful laughter. So I write comedy, but I have promised them that I won't go into it today. But I do start by letting them know that I am environmentally safe comedian, and everything of the heart, and how we can come together, break bread, and laugh together. And the sanctity of the heart is the tree, and the fruit is to come out every now and then and look at the world with a merciful eye, to see every human being as brother and sister, even animals. I must say that in recent years, as a fruit of that mystical experience of friendship with Allah, I have come to see how even trees and rivers and mountains, they speak. They say we are one, we are together. Let us honor our Mother Earth and love one another. As we love our God, so do we love the creation. So everything for me came down to awakening and looking at the whole universe as one particle of divine beauty. So duality was removed to a large extent. Duality, Sufis used to call it the veil. They say when the veil is removed, then union takes place. So perhaps that's the best, shortest, sweetest way to remove our ignorance of duality, prejudice, bias, and selfishness. And it's an endless journey, so I'm never gonna finish the journey. No one has. That's why I pray to Allah every day. I say, awaken us, guide us, every one of us. Awaken us to your mercy, Almighty God, by all names. Allah, Elohim, the compassionate, the merciful, and make us an instrument of your mercy. Amen. Assalamu alaikum.
So for those of you who are scientists or rigorous philosophers and you want to know what the essence of mysticism is, what the characteristics indicate that mysticism must be this and can't be that and all that, all I can tell you is Gabriel walks the walk. So if you want to observe what mysticism does to a human being when they are enveloped in it 24/7, I think you just heard it. Before we move on to the next panelist, I want to remind people that there are sign-up sheets out there. If anybody wants to sign up for Rumi information, Rumi forum information, sign up for JIDS or Jamaat and put an R in a circle, so we'll know that you're also looking to become part of Rumi. Yes.
Can I ask two questions before we switch to the next lecture? Can I ask two questions?
Well, the reason why we're trying to avoid Q&A today is because we have so many speakers about the Holocaust and other atrocities, and in the small groups, they will be circulated. So if you want to ask them questions, you'll be able to do that in the small groups. If you have a housekeeping question, though, go ahead.
Washington Hebrew, is it the same as Hebrew congregation on Macon?
Yes. Mass Ave and Macomb.
Second question, the Imam introduced the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Jesus Christ. The Pentecostals say that Christ is God. How can our God be the God of the God Jesus Christ? This is my question.
Okay, that is a good point to be raised in your small group. We have a diversity of religious views represented here, and yes, you're highlighting a very important question. All right, the next panelist, Herb Levy, was raised in an Orthodox Jewish home. He completed the high school department of the Baltimore Hebrew College, in addition to public high school. Gematria, the numerical practice in Kabbalah, was part of his childhood lexicon. So his Orthodox background is deep. Rav Kook, the first chief rabbi of Palestine, was a yeshiva student in Herb's great-great-grandparents' home in Latvia. In 1994, Herb went to a Jewish renewal center in the Catskills, back when there was a Catskills, and experienced the Shabbat of his life, an ecstatic day of dance and song and prayer. He returned motivated to recreate the experience that he experienced every Shabbat, every day. He has studied on various occasions at international gatherings sponsored by the Jewish Renewal Movement, and he has also been active in Kol Ami, the Northern Virginia Reconstructionist Jewish Community, since December of 2000. During that time, he has led over 100 Jewish services. He has taught Kabbalah classes at Kol Ami and at the Sacred Circle, a bookstore in Old Town Alexandria. He teaches that if the Hebrew letters that make up the name of God were pronounced, they are the sound of our breath, and every breath is prayer. In addition to his work as a teacher of Judaism, and y'all need to listen to this, he is the executive director of Focus. I sure hope you've heard of Focus.
Yes.
It brings folk music and acoustic music in the DC area. And if you haven't heard of Focus, you've got to go to their events if you love folk music, which I do. And I've been to their events before I met this man. Anyway, the last thing I want to say about him is JIDS is honored to have Herb as a member of our board and our treasurer.
God created the heaven and the earth. But in Kabbalah, those same words can also be translated as the beginning created God, also known as the heavens and the earth. The heavens and the earth are the manifestation of God, and every single one of us and everything is God. So everything contains a spark of holiness. We have a task as humans, and that is to open those sparks, to notice them, to free them. Sometimes the sparks are locked up. You can see this in a person's face, that their joy is contained. And our task is to free that spark of holiness, to free the spark that exists in everything so that it can manifest. Every face that's here is one of the faces of God. I invite you to turn to someone you're sitting near and look at that person's eyes just for a moment and marvel. You notice how cute God is today? So, I've got a very short time to talk about Kabbalah. Kabbalah, the word Kabbalah means receiving. Some of us may know the Friday evening service is called Kabbalah Shabbat. It is the receiving of Shabbat. So Kabbalah is a receiving. It is not the only receiving, it is one means of receiving. So in 10 minutes, I'm going to give you the introduction to the introduction of Kabbalah. I'm going to say a few words about one of the essences of Kabbalah that is meaningful to me, which is that the universe is balanced always between existence and non-existence. Okay, now what does that mean? Science teaches me that almost every particle has a component antiparticle. And were it not for one little piece of quanta, this universe would not exist. Because everything else balances itself out to nothing, to Ein Sof, to the null and the void. One little particle has a charge that should have been negative, that's positive. That's why everything exists. So, Kabbalah teaches me that it's up to us to act in the ways that we're capable of acting, and in so doing, maintain existence, because the universe could go out of existence every second. It's not the giant acts, it's not as marvelous as they are the acts of leaders like Martin Luther King, who have kept our existence assured. It is the little things that each of us are capable of doing and do every day. That's what keeps it going. That's what makes the difference. And whenever we come across something that feels immense and insoluble, the scorching of our environment, climate change, we can't do individually all of the things to make a difference about that thing, but we can do something, and the something that we do makes the difference for everything. So I'm going to jump around a bit. I want to read something that I wrote that says what I just said with some time to mull it. Before the forever connection, before there was two, before the birth of stars, before the firmament and the floods and the flowers, before fin and fur, before the need to rest, before there was a before, I am becoming. What I am has always been the constant exchange between these atoms and these waves, intent and consciousness, always a part of this eternal now. Once I knew I am one, a little piece of the one, infinite becoming. After the finish of flesh, after the death of rock and sky and light, I am still a little piece of infinite being. So like I said, in 10 minutes, I'm going to try to hit a number of things. We'll have an opportunity in breakouts. Dan mentioned that was part of my childhood lexicon. In Hebrew, the numbers that are used are also the Hebrew letters. So what that means is that every Hebrew word has a numerical value. And one of the joys of Kabbalah is to find equivalences between one word and another and to discover the connection. And it's part of this sort of cosmic scavenger hunt of understanding. What it does is point out to us that things that may seem very different are actually connected, just as every single one of us may seem very different at the moment, but we are all connected. Lamed Vavnex, one of the, had a bit of a cold and I'm so grateful for water. One of the stories of Kabbalah is about Lamed Vavneck. Lamed Vavneck is the number 36. Who are the Lamed Vavnecks? They are 36 people whose kind and gentle acts makes it possible for this universe to exist. The work that they do quietly and without the knowledge of others is the work that makes it all Lamed Vavnecks. But I have a suspicion that there are several in the room today.
And Heschel died at 65 years of age. He looked like he was 105. His brain was perfect, but life just wore on him physically because he took everything in. So this is a man who was a mystic, and yet who cared so deeply about human beings that he fully lived this life on behalf of himself and all of us. He was definitely one of the greatest figures of the 20th century. Excuse me, I'm about to give you Gabriel's bio again. Hold on. So the last speaker is one of the leading interfaith organizers in Washington, D.C., and is commonly known as the force de majeure. Now, that means a force of nature. But since I coordinate the Washington Spinoza Society and he equated nature with God, we'll just call her a force of God. Currently, she works for the Interfaith Conference of Metropolitan Washington as a program director. And she coordinates, for example, the 2019 Martin Luther King Multi-Faith Commemorative Event, which a number of our organizations participate in. She's an accomplished school teacher. In 2000, she won the Department of State's Award for Excellence in Teaching and represented the United States in Moscow, where she worked to cultivate relationships and enhance curriculum development in the United States and Russia. After retiring from teaching, she became an interfaith bridge builder, and so many organizations have benefited because of it. She was invited to join the Fairfax County government's Faith Communities in Action organization, called Clergy and Leadership Council. And she co-founded the DC Initiative, DC Interfaith Peace Initiative. She has served on the steering committee of the 9/11 Unity Walk, the Imam Rabbi Summit, Jews and Muslims and Allies Working Together, Greater Washington Muslim Jewish Forum. I mean, if it's an interfaith organization in this city, the chances are that Andra Bayless is involved with it. And most relevant for today, she served as the co-founder and first president of the Avatar Mayor Baba Circle of Friends, a spiritually based service organization that was inspired by the teachings of a leading mystic named Mayor Baba. And I have the sneaking suspicion that she will mention that name again to you.
So I remember the book is there. So, in the name of the one who loves us all. Can you hear me? No. So, assalamu alaikum. Shalom. Peace be with you. So, in a manner of speaking, we're experiencing today what the Sufis call a sohbet, which is spiritual conversation that attempts to go, and I quote, beyond the knots of the rational mind and cleanse the soul. It is a kind of spiritual transmission, if you will, and a meeting of the hearts. So Meher Baba, a great Sufi master, said, that which is real, and I want you to remember this, that which is real is given and received in silence. So what I would like to do now, to honor this special moment, is to invite you for just a few seconds to be in the silence, to align our hearts and minds to the divine within us and the connection that we all have with one another. So let's be silent just for a few moments. So thank you. So I'm going to read an excerpt from Song of the Reed. This is by the 13th century mystic Rumi, and it's translated by Coleman Barks. Listen to the story told by the reed of being separated. Since I was cut from the reed bed, I have made this crying sound. Anyone apart from someone he loves understands what I say. Anyone pulled back from a source longs to go back. So this is the yearning of the Sufi. The Sufi feels separated from the divine source, and like the reed, yearns to return to its original source from which it came. I know the reed bed. I know it personally, and the feeling of pure love, because I experienced it before I was born. So I have a memory that's never left me, of being, in a sense, in a realm of love and peace, and there's no way to describe that experience. And all of a sudden, the words came to me. It's time to go back in. And my thoughts were back into the world of feelings and emotions. And then I was shown my parents. They were in the kitchen. And not long after that, I was in some kind of container. I now think it was a carriage with some type of material protecting my eyes from the sunlight. So having that experience, having this memory stayed with me, and it was the beginning of my awareness that there's more to life than the material world we are immersed in. And I want you to remember that. My hope today is to speak about mysticism with a practical application of what it looks like in the life of a person who believes with all of her heart in the existence of divinity, a benevolent power greater than ourselves, not encased in the limitations of an entity outside of us, but a consciousness that is omnipresent, omnipotent, and the source of all things, and is within us. And I seriously take that we are created in the image of God. So I'm a devotee of the Sufi master Meher Baba, who is known as the silent master, who chose the spiritual discipline of remaining silent for 44 years. Try being silent for 44 minutes. So he used to use hand gestures and a special sign language to convey his thoughts. So how do we bless the world? Meher Baba says, every moment we have a chance to bring love into the world. He says God listens only to the language of the heart, which constitutes love. The most practical way for a common man to express the language of the heart whilst attending to daily life duties is to speak lovingly, think lovingly, and act lovingly toward all mankind, irrespective of caste, creed, and position, taking God to be present in each and every one. So Meher Baba dropped his body in 1969, and he left a compendium of literature about hidden mysteries that form the underpinnings of the world, That's mysticism, folks. It's the underpinnings of our existence. So in his book, Discourses, he discusses the stages of the Sufi path, good and evil, God and the individual, the occult in spirituality, and even more. And he has a chapter called The Life of the Spirit, which I especially appreciate. And it's really what Gabriel was sharing with you, and it was what Herb was sharing with you. And in his chapter, he says, if the body yields to the claims of the spirit, as it should, it is instrumental in bringing down the kingdom of heaven on earth. It becomes a vehicle for the release of the divine life. And when it subserves this purpose, it might aptly be called the temple of God on earth. And that's you. It's what you do with the divine spark within you. So in his discourses, Meher Baba describes the levels of heaven and hell as states of mind, and he says they should not be looked upon as places. At this point, I'm going to follow what Maimonides' admonition was, as stated in his Guide for the Perplexed. That coming from the force of what he refers to as rabbinic dictum, that the Ma'aseh Merkava, the chariots of God, mysticism in Muhammad and Maimonides' words, must not be fully expounded unless the student is worthy. Even then, he says, you should merely acquaint him with the heads of the different sections of the subject. So out of deference to Maimonides, I invite you to read the vast table of contents in the discourses that Meher Baba has online. It's free, you don't even have to download it. And it has all kinds of subjects that I think you would be very interested in. And if you read it alone, that's where your consciousness expands according to your personal capacity. And that's the reason why it's difficult to teach mysticism. I can say, however, that mysticism is delving into the deeper truths and seeing with more depth the inner workings of the planes of existence. It is the truth behind life itself. And the divine guidance comes through symbology, and I want you to remember this in your private lives, where things that you see and feel have deeper significance. So pay attention to your intuition, pay attention to your inner promptings. As an example, years ago, I knew my father was going to die 1 year before he did. He wasn't that ill at the moment. But what happened is I began using the symbology that I had learned, and I began recognizing black cloths everywhere, black, black, black. I began recognizing the number 9, which is a symbol of completion. And then one night, my back hurt horribly for no apparent reason. And I thought, what does this mean? Structure, strength. The gentleman I had depended upon my whole life, I was going to be losing. So there were many other things that happened, too many that I won't share now. So symbolic language and metaphors help us to better grasp the subtle spiritual concepts, such as how we may become closer to God. For instance, through his ecstatic poetry, Rumi gives us guidance of what separates us, using the terms veils us from closeness to God. And Rumi says, it is you, your ego, that forms a veil between you and God. It is when your ego is sublimated and you see the harmony of existence of all life that that which we seek becomes revealed to us. There is more. We have what we call threads of energy connecting us, called sanskaras, which act like CDs that are burned, except these sanskaric threads have a kind of genetic code with the residue of experiences we're destined to go through with people who come into our lives apparently as strangers. How many of you have experienced instantly liking somebody? Nobody? Of course you have. The tougher question, how many of you have experienced being repelled from somebody instantly, not having any background with them? Okay, so these are instances of having karmic debts that have to be satisfied with lessons learned in order to progress in future lives. So there's an energy also emanating from our physical form, a kind of electrical frequency that translates into colors depending upon our stage of development and our thoughts. Reading about this, and this is how I did this is a book by Barbara Brennan called Hands of Light. So I had been reading about Hands of Light, and it's one thing to read about these things. It's another thing to have two daughters that can see these things. My one daughter, when she was 7, began to say, "Oh, Mom, you've got a tornado over your head." What is she talking about? I said, "Draw it." She draws, and today we know that's a chakra. How could she know this at 7 years old? My other daughter, Blythe, by the way, the other one's a nurse today at 40. So my other daughter, Blythe, sees colors around people all the time. And one day we were at a gas station. I'm doing something innocently like filling my car with gas. And all of a sudden she gets hysterical. "Oh, Mom, look at your arm. Look at your arm." It was amazing to hear a young person say that. So I know these things are real when your own children can do this. And other people can do it too. They become famous and they write books. So, for your own research, there's Dr. Abdul Haq, who is a Russian scientist, and he's been able to do what we know as photograph this energy body, and it's called Kirlian photography. So this spiritual path also has unexpected moments of what we call spiritual ecstasy, or states of bliss, as Herb was telling with dancing. So I experienced having that kind of thing happen to me out of the blue. One night, I was singing in a choir at the Meher Baba Retreat Center in Myrtle Beach. And we were singing the most beautiful song. And it's something like, "Beloved God, help us all to love you more and more, and more and more, and still yet more, till we become worthy of union with you. And help us all to hold fast to Baba's tongue till the very end." And it had beautiful harmony. And when I sat down, I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. And I had to have a friend get me up. And for 3 days, I did not eat, I did not drink, and I could not speak. This happened again a few months later. I was in prayer, and the same thing happened. And after prayer, I could not speak, I did not eat or drink anything for almost 1 week. So these things happen, and they're called states of ecstasy. So what's important is not that you're in this state, but what's important is how you use this additional energy that you're getting from these ecstatic moments. So I began praying daily, an Arabic prayer somebody had given me. I now know today it was the Fatiha, which is the first surah in the Quran. And I also added my own prayer. Change my life in any way that you can, so that I can serve you and serve all of creation. Well, not long after that, I was in the kitchen, silently praying and having a connection with God, saying the very same thing: I want to serve you. Let me know what it is that I'm supposed to do. Well, as Dan said, I was a teacher, so I was wearing a lanyard with white beads and one of those thick plastic IDs. And I'm saying, let me know what it is you want me to do. At that moment, my plastic ID cracked in half, and half of it went flying across the kitchen. I said, oh my God. So I went running upstairs. I looked at this picture of Mayor Baba over my bed, and I said to him, because I knew the symbology, I said, Baba, if I'm not going to be a teacher, what can I do? And at that moment, my lanyard of white beads broke, and all the beads went over the bed with a string hanging. And I said, oh, in his discourses, he said one of the reasons why he came was to tie all religions together like beads on one string. There were the beads, there was the string. That was my message, and that's what I do today. And that's why I do it today. So, my mother was a born-again, charismatic, fundamental, evangelical Christian. She married my father, who was Jewish. So you can imagine that was my first interfaith experience. So I share with you these things that I just shared with you that are essentially very private. And not as Andra, but with the courage to live up to my Hebrew name, Ara. Ara, I created when I became an adult bat mitzvah. The A is for Aleph, which means Achava, which is love. The R is for Resh, Hebrew letter, which means compassion. And the other A, Aleph, is for Emet, truth. So love, compassion, and truth. And so I do my best to be able to live up to that, and that's my silent name. And also, a few years ago, I was also given another name. And the name was given to me by a sheikha in New York. And the name is Muslima Latif. Muslima is a woman who has given up her ego to God to serve. And then Latif is subtle. And so it gives me the message that I go through the world in a subtle way, doing the work that I've been assigned. So, Mayor Baba says, as we experience the world of duality and the pendulum of opposites, of pain and pleasure, we're burned in the fire, and our soul is honed and formed. So it is through the trials and tribulations of life that we gain wisdom to live the highest quality of life we can that's born of love. So what is the meaning of life, we're always asking. So I want you to listen to this. This is a quote from Mayor Baba. To penetrate into the essence of all being and significance, and to release the fragrance of that inner attainment for the guidance and benefit of others, by releasing into the world of forms truth, love, purity, and beauty. That is the sole game that has any intrinsic and absolute worth. All other happenings, incidents, and attainments can in themselves have no lasting importance. So we're assured in the Quran and the Torah that God is closer to us than our own jugular vein. So why not sit in silence and commune with God? I will leave you with this wonderful quote from Rumi. Rumi says, "There is loneliness more precious than life. There is a freedom more precious than the world. Infinitely more precious than life and the world is that moment when you're alone with God." Thank you.
Well, as you can see from looking around the room, God has blessed you not to be alone. Right? And this creates a challenge for the small groups, but we're going to meet it because I have a feeling you all would like to talk as well as just listen. So we do have another room across the hall, okay? And I wonder if a bunch of you can go over there and just try to form small groups of 6 to 8. We'll probably try to meet for 35 or 40 minutes and then come back